CTV military analyst and retired Major General David Fraser joins me now to discuss the situation more. Major General, thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
We are talking now that Israelis said they are planning a full siege. I mean, that almost sounds medieval. Does it work?
Well, the short answer is they don't really work that well. But for Israel right now, to say they're going to have a siege gives them time to kind of figure out what they want to do next, and it sends a message off to the Hamas that we're not going into the city just yet. But at the same time, they're probably preparing to go into the city if they don't achieve their initial objectives. The fact that they've attacked and knocked down the mosques, that's again, not where a lot of people are going to be, but it sends a clear message to those who are probably sending them Hamas leaders out into Israel that these are the targets they're going to go after. So this is the first of a very long operation that Israel is going to be doing, and they will dismantle Hamas.
With the talking about the air bombings, will they need to go in, or do you think that it can work from the air? Can they take out the sites that they want to take out?
Roger, in a word, aerial bombardment will not achieve what they're looking for. You do have to follow it up with boots on the ground now, and that'll be a big decision, and it'll be a political decision of what happens between Hamas and the Israelis about getting back those hostages and whatnot. And the last thing that the Israelis don't want to do, but are probably prepared to do, is send in the ground troops into Gaza to go clear out Hamas. This as we're looking at the picture here, fighting in a urban center is a costly event, both in terms of equipment and most of all the loss of life when you go in there.
And Gaza is an extremely dense area. I believe there's about 2.5 million people there, and it's about half the size of the city of Toronto or half the size of the Lower Mainland in BC. It's not very big, but very dense. I can only imagine the fighting would be horrific if they had to go in.
The fighting would be horrific is a great description. And, as we're looking at the picture now, I mean, just that little area alone will consume hundreds, if not thousands of troops to get in there and to go from room to room to room. It is a defender's joy, an attacker's nightmare. But unfortunately, there's an awful lot of civilians in there who have no dog in this fight, and they would be the ones that would be suffering the most. But this is not going to be easy for either side, and bad days are ahead of us.
Now, with the apparent lapse in intelligence when it came to this attack on Saturday, how much can the Israeli army trust their intelligence on where they think Hamas might be within Gaza?
Well, right now, I mean, the initial intelligence failed for whatever the reasons. We'll find out in time, but it was a failure. But now the intelligence is probably on hyperdrive, and the Israeli army now knows where Hamas is inside of Gaza. Inside of Israel, they'll be all over the ground, both boots on the ground. They'll be using electronic means, human means to find these militants. So what was a failure a couple of days ago will now be turned into an advantage for the Israelis, who will be going after those who are in the country. And secondly, the sources on the command and control nodes inside of Gaza.
And those sources, can they be trusted after what happened? Do you think those are still reliable sources?
It's a great question because there are two parts to it. Those people who are completely sympathetic, empathetic to Hamas won't give the Israelis anything. And those who have been disenfranchised will be helping out the Israelis. So the Israelis will get an awful lot more intelligence than they had, 3-4 days ago. But at the same time, they're going to have to discern what is disinformation and what is real good information. But let there be no doubt, the Israelis will be using a blunt force instrument to go and to punish Hamas for what's happening here. And that was illustrated this morning in some of the reports where, in fact, a number of hostages were actually killed along with militants. This won't be a finesse operation. This is just going to be brute force to punish what has happened.
Even though with all we're seeing, and Israel saying they have now cleared out any Hamas militants from Israeli towns, they're still launching rockets into Israel. Any concerns that that can continue, and also any more incursions?
I think, first of all, you never rule out any more incursions. Look what Hamas did. They completely surprised the Israelis. They probably got other routes that they can get into Israel. So I think that's always a possibility. The other thing is, just by the sheer nature and the numbers of rockets they've been firing, they've got thousands more rockets. And so that is going to be the weapon of choice for Hamas to go after the Israelis. And that'll be the target of choice for the Air Force and for the Israelis to go after.
And adding to this, we've heard possibly 2 Canadians are missing, maybe hostages. Several Americans are reportedly hostages. How much does that impact what Israel does when there are foreigners who are being held in the Gaza Strip as well?
In the first case, all the hostages are a problem for Israel, and in previous conflicts with Hamas, they would have probably taken a lot more due diligence in finding them and getting them out safely. Given with what's happened, I don't think the due diligence is going to be as good as it was in the past because there's a sense of urgency to get as many people out as they can. So they will probably accept a little bit more risk on those operations. Not good news if you're a hostage. The fact that we've got hostages who are international residents or visitors, that will in fact complicate the political game for this entire war right now. And those host nations will be going back over to the Israeli government saying, we want assurances that our citizens are going to be taken care of and you're going to get them. So that puts more pressure on Israel to get them out safely. So and what's the second order of effect of what happens to those nations if they don't get their hostages out? What pressure does that put on those nation leaders?
And that's a question I was going to ask you. What happens next for Canada? Say that there are 2 Canadians, at least two, because I believe there are about 35,000 Canadians living in Israel. There are another 1,500 to 2,000 who had registered with our government that they were traveling in Israel. There are a lot of Canadians. We have strong connections. If there are hostages, how would that impact our relations with Israel and around the world?
Well, I think for Canada specifically, it's not going to adversely affect our relationship with Israel. We have a strong relationship. We've come out very strongly against Hamas and against this attack on Israel. My heart goes out for anybody from Canada or any of the nations who have been taken as a hostage by Hamas and whatnot. It is going to be a very difficult time for family and friends to watch this. And I think for Canada, whatever we can do in the way of intelligence, in the way of humanitarian support, or anything that Israel comes up and asks, we should be able to give it to them because it's in our own interest and it's in the hostages' interest. United States has already sent off an aircraft battle group over there. They've given them ammunition. They're going to give them a lot more intelligence. So the world is going to galvanize around Israel like the world galvanized around Ukraine against this terrorist threat called Hamas.
CTV military analyst and retired Major General David Fraser, thank you for your time as always.
Roger, thank you.